The interesting part is that innerwear is neither fashion, nor is it exactly FMCG, right? So it is somewhere in between. It has nuances of this, it has
Innerwear never figured anywhere because it was inside.
कबर्ड में भी छुपा ही रहता था.
कबर्ड में भी छुपा रहता था. And I'm talking of men's. The women's was much, but the largest brands in this category are men's innerwear brands.
Hi, welcome to this edition of BlueBytes. Before we start, I want to thank everyone for all the love that we have been getting for our podcast. It is a unique platform that we are trying to create where we get industry specialists, opinion makers, and people who can really make a difference to talk about the industry and very many aspects in the industry, from marketing to supply chain to sourcing, the works. A lot of you have asked us to make this into a regular feature, and this is exactly what we intend to do. Today, we have a very special guest for all of you. Please welcome Mr. Shekhar Tewari. He is the Chief Category and Operations Officer for Modenik India. He handles two of the most popular innerwear brands in the country. He has experience in marketing and sales and operations for over 2.5 decades. And he has worked in FMCG, in the white goods industry, and in the innerwear space. I would like to begin today's session by asking a very simple question. If you could please take us through your journey in your career through FMCG to white goods to innerwear, and also take us through how the industry has been changing through the many years that you've been in it.
So if I was to look back, we are the 3 idiots generation, right? Mm-hmm. So we were born and the father looked at you and said, "Ye engineer banega ya doctor banega." In my case, it was engineer.
Okay.
So I did my engineering, started worked as a service engineer for some time. And then I realized that people who do MBA, grow faster, earn more. So that was the whole logic. So we went ahead and did our MBA because again, engineers are the MBA exams are loaded towards engineers cracking those. Okay. So I did my MBA, and post my MBA, when you're doing your MBA and you want to do marketing, because that was the glamorous thing to do. So I'm just being very, very honest about that as a 17, 18, 20-year-old, right?
Sure.
Okay. And then we said marketing is the thing to do. And within marketing, FMCG. So I got, from campus, I got placed in Balsara Hygiene. Obviously, one had no great ideas, though a couple of years in MBA sort of gave you some theoretical knowledge of certain things to do. But then you went there and, those formative years were great because you draw back on that even today. So understanding, and it was primarily sales at that point of time because that's how, as a new fresh management trainee in most FMCG companies, you go through, right? Learning the ropes of the trade, learning what is selling, the interplay of company with the channels, the distributors, retailers, that was fascinating. And I think that was the basic grounding, So started from there, moved to Eureka Forbes from there, and started the brand stint there as a brand manager. Eureka Forbes had taken the license for a brand called Murphy Richards at that point of time.
Yes,
Eureka Forbes is primarily known for the direct sales arm, correct, which is AquaGuard vacuum cleaners, and but they had taken this whole Murphy Richards appliances. So I was the brand manager for that, and from there I moved on to Jockey Page, and that's where my innerwear journey started. Hasn't sort of ended since then, but
still continuing and going strong. Yeah. Absolutely. So for our viewers who are very curious about the innerwear segment, particularly how now that it has become such a hotly competitive space, it's a stock market favorite segment. So the interesting part is that innerwear is neither fashion, nor is it exactly FMCG, right? So it is somewhere in between. It has nuances of this, it has nuances of that. So please share with us, how is it different? And I'll ask you 3 different questions on this. So the first part is, how is it different from product perspective? How is product treated in fashion versus innerwear versus, let's say, FMCG? How do you see the difference?
So in India, if I look back, and I joined Page in 97, so it's been now, in this industry for 25, 26 years. Fairly long time,
pretty
right?
Long.
Pretty long time. Okay. And across, like you said, across brands, international brands. When I moved from Eureka Forbes to an innerwear company at that point of time, late 90s, Eureka Forbes used to be a Tata company. Okay. And Tata's, so first of all, coming from UP, father was in the civil services. So one disappointment was that you haven't tried for civil services. Now you're doing a private job. And then on top of that, Tata was at least respectable. So from there, getting into innerwear, like my parents were actually would not even tell people where I was working.
Oh my.
Okay, so that was the type of stigma. And why I'm telling this to you, because it also has reflections on, because this is the socio-cultural, mindset, right? And that reflects on products also, and how then products, brands, and
Sure.
price points, and how consumers look at it. Okay, innerwear never figured anywhere, right? Because it was inside. It wasn't something that you wanted to, that you consciously could show, project a certain image about yourself, right?
कबर्ड में भी छुपा ही
और
रहता था.
कपबोर्ड में भी छुपा रहता था. And I'm talking of men's. The women's was much, was further behind. So that used to reflect on the product, that used to reflect on the price, that used to reflect on everything else that comes along. So I think 90s was when probably outerwear, men's outerwear, or casual wear started sort of getting branded. Brands started coming into that space, and that category started growing. So innerwear was way beyond that. So innerwear was a very functional category. It was basic products. It was innerwear as in brief hoga ya trunk hoga. It was a necessity. You needed to wear it first thing in the morning and remove it, whatever. That was the job it was doing. Okay. Between then and now, today when we talk of 25, 26 years, that there's been a sea change. Innerwear, as we said, innerwear first of all has evolved. There are many categories. There are boxer shorts, and when you look at women's, that's fantastic. And it's now started mirroring outerwear in a certain way.
Okay.
So colors have started coming in, fabrics have started coming in, innovation has started coming in, branding has started coming in, and that's how the whole thing has changed. So from a product perspective, there's a phenomenal change. In terms of the expectations of the consumers from the category, and hence what you have to do.
So if I may just put it in a slightly different way, earlier it was very staple,
Yes.
very basic.
Yes.
Today, elements of fashion have started
Yes.
kind of coming in from a branding as well as a marketing, whatever, including
Yes.
fashion, etc. perspective.
Yes. See, societies have become far more, I'm saying, permissive in a nice way. Okay. Consumers have become more confident about their bodies, about themselves, about projecting themselves. Started with men. Taking their shirts off was acceptable even way back. So you had those ganjis, you had those knitted ganjis, which movie starred with Sazu wear, or you had those, athletic vests that started coming in. Okay.
Yes.
So then the morphing of the product from a functional to something which came out in the open. When it came out in the open, then it had to have a certain quality standard in terms of aesthetic appeal, in terms of design, in terms of colors, and that changed.
So I'll come to the second part. How is the supply chain? How is the supply chain different between fashion, innerwear,
conventional fashion and innerwear, right?
Yeah.
So innerwear is funny in certain, and that's why probably many people, brands have struggled, taken a period of time, right? Okay, so one was this whole consumer aspect of it. Two, innerwear, while being apparel, has elements of FMCG in it, so to say. We call it quasi FMCG. See,
Okay.
it's primarily a boxed, and I'm primarily talking of men's innerwear, panties and stuff. Bras are beginning to go out more and get merchandise, get opened and displayed and stuff like that. But it's a boxed program. The distribution is unlike most apparel. This is probably the most intensively distributed category. Socks, innerwear, hankies. Those are the type of things that within the space of apparel, from innerwear to jackets, if you were to say, I think this is the most intensively distributed category. The largest part of the distribution is still mom and pop stores. A typical innerwear distribution universe is 4 lakh to 5 lakh stores. So given that this is the type of distribution, it's a boxed category, and it was a staple. Innerwear, some of the advantages of innerwear that as being a staple was that there was a large core to it, unlike fashion apparel. So when you have a large core, there's a certain element of repeatability, there's a certain element of consistency, and that is what you would drive. Over the years, what's happened is that, like we said, the categories morph, the categories evolved. So now there's an element of fashion come in, where now you have to look at seasons, you have to look at weddings, you have to look at occasions, and within India, you have separate certain times. Hence, now you've started planning things around that. Okay. So, and given that you have to reach out to 4 lakh outlets, the primary distribution channel used to be multi-brand outlets. That's obviously changing as it is evolving. The brands which have come in, department stores have come in, still niche, but still small, but It's a channel especially for premium, mid-premium brands, which has grown. E-commerce has come in now, depending on how various brands have been successful in navigating that channel, because legacy brands have their own challenges with that channel, right? So that's another channel. And then you obviously have your exclusive stores, which again at the top end brands are beginning to grow.
So this brings me to a very interesting question. Sorry, this is out of syllabus.
Okay.
So, we keep talking about this India market and a Bharat market, right? That India and Bharat. So, obviously, innerwear is something that goes through this whole segment.
Yes.
So how is that changing? Are you seeing the tier 2, tier 3 markets now moving more and more towards the same kind of products that, let's say, the premium markets are doing? How do you see that, or where do you think it is going to go?
Okay.
Because even your online channels have reached there.
Yes. So a couple of things, and I think this whole in India, the funny part is that even if a consumer he has a certain socioeconomic stature and he wants to buy a product at a certain price, the expectation from the product for various things is still there. You want multiple things at the same price. So that's one thing. While this is happening at one end, at the top end of the segment, there are people who expect something no less than what is available elsewhere in the world. And there you have to go to that other end of innovation, where you have to actually look at those latent demands, and when very often the consumer is not really able to tell you what, and that as people in the industry and design, we have to look at the next step and probably nudge him or her towards that.
I think you've touched both on supply chain and distribution, so I think that kind of begets the third question. Shekhar, you happen to be one of the few professional leaders in this innerwear industry. Mostly this industry is actually managed by families and their family-run businesses. So this is a question that I've been asked very often, and I thought I'll ask you. Why is there such a dearth of professionally managed companies in this industry? What are the kind of issues that professionalizing a company in this industry entails? And this is very relevant because right now a lot of companies are looking to professionalize this business.
So I think long and multiple elements to that question. So let me try to answer it. So first of all, you said the dearth of professional companies. So I think that goes back to the earlier conversation we were having, which was that this category per se was not a category which was very coveted or which commanded a certain price premium or stuff. So I think this industry also started as a very more as a product and a label rather than as brand. Anyways, there were no brands at that point of time in the sense that we know brands today. And started probably Calcutta, right? If I'm not mistaken, late 18th century or somewhere in a place called Khidirpur or something, one of your ancestors, some Bengali gentleman started that, right? Okay. I mean, as underwear ki factories, and I think then that whole ecosystem grew from there. Okay, and which is why probably you see large set of, in fact, all the men's innerwear, large men's innerwear brands are Kolkata based.
Even today.
Okay, even today, Kolkata based, because it were Marwaris, enterprising people, businessmen who then picked it up and started selling this, and over a period of time build brands. See, what we also I think don't give enough credit to this industry is that we have big names in apparel and outerwear and fashion wear, but the largest brands in this category are men's innerwear brands.
Okay.
The largest brands, and our turnovers are in wholesale. Everything is WSP, yes, which is when you give to the distributor, and then there's a channel. So if I start telling you MRP turnovers, those turnovers will be probably 2-3 times the size of most of these marquee brands that we talk of today. Okay, so that's one aspect.
Interesting.
That is one aspect. Okay, so you have to give credit where
it is due.
So a set of people have proprietors, individual proprietors or family-run businesses which have created businesses of this size. Now within the constraints, so all those challenges, and still they have developed this whole set of brands within the constraints. But the reality is that most of the the organized Indian industry or the bigger companies did not think of this as a category worth pursuing, and hence professionals would not. I remember when I would interview, when I went, like I gave you my example, when I went in there, my father was very happy with me working in a Tata company, but innerwear company. So if that was what the social context was, why would professionals want to join an industry like that? And the fact that it was I think family owned and managed. So family businesses have a certain way of growing. The extended family, the brothers get into it, the children get into it, and obviously professionals then need their own space and feel stifled probably, right? Now, but that's how this grew. It reached a certain size. But now what's also interestingly happening, and that's why I was probably one of those people who, by chance, by whatever, went into this earlier. So, I mean, so which is why you said ki why there are fewer professionals,
Yes.
so to say, right? And I was lucky to be be able to work in companies which by then Page was coming into India. It was a licensee. While it was a family-owned business, other than the top, everything else was professionally managed. So there was space for professionals to grow and perform. So now I think what's happening is a lot of apparel brands. I think there's also pressure of growth everywhere. You create your stores, and then you see brands coming internationally. So you have Calvin Klein, others coming in there. They have I think 15 or 20% of their business in a store can come through innerwear. So people probably realize that, this is a category. You come to shop for your outerwear, you can also buy this. So I think that's where now brands are getting into it. So my current assignment, which was Advent taking over Dixie at one level and Enamor at another level, and both were proprietor family run businesses, but very differently. Enamor was family run, but was run very differently. The family, other than investing and at a board level, had really no say. So I was running the business, and that's why I moved, and I was it was an extremely rewarding stint. And then Advent bought it, right? They bought Dixie parallelly, which was again Tirupur. A Tirupur company which was based out of Tirupur, which was in a segment which was very different. So the ecosystem, if I was to tell you, we had 900 vendor partners at one point of time.
Wow.
So that's how it was fragmented, run like that, managed by families. So right now we've brought that together, and I mean the last 2 or 3 years, and we're trying to build a different a professional culture, getting professionals, merging both the businesses together. So I think the challenge the challenge that you face is first of all, if it is still at the top end run by the family, the ability and the willingness of the family to let go. So many innerwear companies today also at the top level are still controlled by the family, which owns it, but they have professionals at various levels. But the challenge that most of those companies face is one, getting good professionals, and that's because when you get a professional, then you have to let him
handle things.
And at every level, I think in India, most companies other than MNCs are still. So whether you look at Arvind, whether you look at Reliance, they are still. Ultimately, there's a family which owns them, but they're very different because they have moved away from that. In innerwear, because it's still. I mean, I think the journey is still evolving. So I think that's one big challenge where giving it to professionals, giving them that space in the authority, responsibility, accountability also. But it cannot be that you give the accountability for results, but you keep interfering in the responsibility. Then it starts creating fissures. So I think that's one challenge that I've seen. Then lower down, this is the top level. Lower down companies which have been very family managed, what I have seen and what I've realized, and the challenge that we face in our current business and what we are working through is that because the decision making, the power is all concentrated within a select set of people. People down the line lose the ability to, they become workers. I mean, they become postmen. We say na ki salesman bolte na ki don't do a postman type of selling. Go and do an evolved selling, right? So they sort of become that. They wait for instructions. There is a decision paralysis. They don't take decisions, and they wait for instructions. They want somebody else to take the ownership. And that is that mindset that you want to change, because when you professionalize, you cannot get into every single thing. You want good people to man roles, and you want them to and then do things. And then you have a cadence of reviews, you have a cadence of, checking things at various intervals, but that's missing.
So this is actually it's really a change of the whole culture and the mindset completely.
Yes,
and the culture that has set in, I'm changing
and
to
that
a new
takes,
culture.
That takes the longest.
I have another question, and I know I'm slightly going off syllabus here, but mostly when you're family run or when you're very owner driven, a lot of decision making is very quick. Like, you get a good deal in cotton or you get a good deal in yarn, the person takes a very quick decision to buy it, and he has a power. Nobody questions him.
Yes.
Whereas when you professionalize, a lot of these go through certain due process. Why did you buy this? Justifications. Even if you want to take those calls, certain parameters are laid out between which you will do. Now, two things I've seen would typically happen because of this. One is that normally decisions become slightly slower compared to the previous one, and secondly, also the cost of these decisions sometimes become more expensive. So you can't take decisions. You will only take that much of a bet. You may not take a full bet. So eventually, your product cost may not be as sharp as it would have been. Because people, how these companies are run, right? I mean, you get a good deal, you suddenly buy, and you manage to get certain windfall gains. And every 6 months, most of these family-run businesses, because of the way they control their supply chain, they do get windfall gains from somewhere or the other, which somewhere in a professional company may not happen. So I don't know if this impacts, but what is your take on this?
No, it does. And it's an interesting point, Anindya. See, so yes, the ability to take decisions, because again, the power and the authority is in few people, right? I mean, I worked with as a licensee of an international company, and I've also worked directly with Sarali was 100%. So why it was the company, but the processes that you have to follow to even get a advertising large campaign is a big thing. But there are small things also to go through the process. Process is very, very large. Okay, yes. and that takes time, obviously, and there's an inbuilt probably inefficiency in this setup where you are far more entrepreneurial, you are still trying to grow, so that interplay is there. And whereas from a promoter led, you are able to take those quick decisions, and like you said, you take the example of yarn, but that stems from the fact that most of these promoter companies, the promoters, like I said, they have grown up in these businesses. Okay, so there is a knowledge base that is there, and hence they're able to do that.
The knowledge is virtually institutionalized.
Yeah, it's institutionalized. So they have, so their children, they have from a very young age, they have lived and they breathe that ecosystem. Okay, so they are able to take that. The flip side of that is it becomes people driven.
Yes,
that whole concept of we can say that sometimes when you have chaos in a country, and democracy is not the best thing, autocracy, but then you leave your whatever your whole being in the hands of that autocrat. Now if it's a benevolent autocrat, he's good, great, but if he turns around the other way, so similarly, and that's what happens in these companies. Sometimes the guy who started, or somebody, maybe he was very good, okay, and he did things all the right way and stuff, and then what happens, and I'm seeing that's actually paying out in men's innerwear today. Okay, all those are second, third generation families coming. So 3 brothers, 12 children, all that now. And everybody need not, first of all, be as competent or maybe want to do the same set of things. And that's now beginning to play out differently. Okay, so it's pros and cons. So for the longer term, if you build institutions, if you institutionalize systems and all that, then hopefully over a period of time, you should be able to reap the rewards. But yes, so I don't know if
very interesting. This is an amazing conversation. Yeah. So the next question I really had was on distribution. Given the emergence of these new D2C platforms in the country, how has it been for you? How are you seeing the industry evolving? What does it really mean for the legacy distribution that is there in the industry? What does it mean for pricing? Is the whole industry really going the discounting way, or is there any other strategy? So can you enlighten us on what actually is happening in the industry? How are people tackling this new age channel that is really cropped up and is really changing things?
So first of all, a very, very honest response first of all is if anybody today really knows or has cracked the system, then he or she either he should be given an award and two, I think everybody is trying to work there. All brands, businesses are trying to work their way through that. Okay, the reality is that this is a channel, or this is something that this evolution that has happened in terms of buying behavior is not going to change. Okay, so you have to live with that, and you have to evolve, and you have to evolve your strategies, you have to evolve your thinking, and you have to responses to know that this is also going to. This is a bit like when I think early 90s the department stores came, and in India, given the 1.4, we'll go to 1.7 at one point of time billion people before we start plateauing, and there's only so much land mass. So I think real estate is always going to be a problem. To say that in a short time we'll go to where the Western world is, where you'll have big box retail only and mom and pop will not be there, I think is not going to happen in the near future, at least, right? And that's where D2C also comes in, because the whole ability to then be able to display endless aisle, be able to go to those 22,000, 25,000, whatever number of pin codes, which otherwise physically, even for brands like us, was impossible. Impossible. So that gives you access. So it's a disruptor. Having said that, now the way e-com is playing out today, is that today the focus after everything else is still on the price, right, and the discount. So legacy brands tend to have a challenge there. What D2C and online has done is that it's become very easy. It's become easier for an entrepreneur or for a new person to come and launch something. See, earlier, think of it. If you wanted to launch an FMCG brand and you have an idea, could you and I ever go and take on the might of the FMCG players? No, absolutely no. And even apparel, right? You could not, because to be able to invest in that type of conventional distribution, put feet on street, create those assets would have, you need investment, and that only big people can do. So you could not, even if you had an idea, you could not do that. So what D2C has unlocked is the whole inherent potential, and for people who can think differently and come up with a proposition to be able to go and present it to the consumers. And if it is good and whatever, then you are able to get some value out of it. So what D2C does is it gives you a platform, it gives you a consumer base, you can target, you can do niches, okay, and you can come to a certain size, and sometimes you come to that size very soon. Top line, bottom line is debatable, we all know that, okay, but at least you come to that size, right? Yeah. But then expanding from there, because even if you look at all the established markets, US, China, online has, which are ahead of us, they've still reached only a certain percentage. So to say that now if you knew that it is now 90%, then you'll say, okay, I will forget this other channel and I will focus. Mobile phones, some of those people actually did that, right? In certain categories. Yeah. In apparel, where touch and feel is so important, fit is important, all those things are important. I really don't know whether, you can ever move to that. AI is coming. You can online now be able to, see things in certain ways which help your buying, right? But still, that whole charm of, that whole romance of, being able to actually go and feel and touch and then wear and see is missing, right? So that won't happen. And since that won't happen, brands will have to take calls. I think one way in which many brands are doing that is creating sub brands. But I still have an inherent issue with that. So for example, if I have an Amber, and why would a consumer even want a sub brand? Because he will want something from an Amber. If I change the name, then all the residual equity that I have built of an Amber will not translate to that, and then you have to start from scratch. Yeah. And if I do XYZ by an Amber and then I sell it at a differential rate, I might get an initial uplift, and which I will, because I've invested behind this brand for so long and I'm encashing that, milking that. But what would it do to the mother brand?
No, I always find it very interesting, because I think the pricing, in online is so different, and I feel that the brick and mortar, channels tend to get very upset when they see the same products they're selling at different prices. Yeah. So thanks, that was very, very interesting. So is the consumer buying behavior really changing? How do you see that kind of impacting distribution going forward?
So, like I told you, so in this category, the consumer's expectations are evolving, and that gives an opportunity to newer brands to actually come in and do that. Now, today and the D2C brands have actually done that. See, the one thing which I didn't touch upon in our other previous conversation on D2C was that while these are all the negatives, so these are the challenges that you face with that. The other reality is some of these D2C brands across categories, the way they've come, the speed of execution, the whole consumer first lens. Now to make a viable commercial proposition out of this over a period of time, today the hypothesis is we'll grow top line to such a level over a period of time that we'll become profitable. That's pretty much the hypothesis today. Right. And that has to play out, and that requires a lot of investment and a very wide horizon at this point of time. But the reality is that, forget what is happening at the bottom end, because that's a challenge, but there are certain set of people who are willing to try them out. These were no-name brands before, and they've now, against very established brands and in FMCG and, what should I say, oral care, to things which are very personal also, where people take a lot of time to change, but people are doing shampoos. I mean, it's your hair, it's your skin. Should I do it? Should I not do it? But there are brands which have come in and they become 500,000 crores. And at what? So what that has taught, I think, many of us brands is that, you cannot live in the equilibrium that you have been living, right? And it can get disrupted, and you better look at ways and, things that they have done. The whole consumer connect, the speed with which they do things, the whole micro, or should I say the niche consumer targeting that they are doing for various things, those are things to learn.
Where do you see the role of technology now coming into play? Sorry, I will always ask a technology question.
Bilkul.
But where do you see the role of technology in both supply chain and distribution? Because, I'll tell you the context from which I'm saying. One is obviously transparency in the complete backend, because it's a very fragmented backend. The other is also one of the largest investments that brands really have is the amount of inventory they carry.
Yes.
Right. So these are two aspects where at least I felt is a difference. So over to you. I mean,
it is.
Where do you see it happening?
So Anindya, not just the supply chain and distribution, also product. I think because in our industry, so one at a very base level, technology in terms of new age technologies which can make products more. Improve the performance, improve various parameters. That's been happening for a period of time, right?
Correct.
On the supply chain, if I look at manufacturing, purely manufacturing per se. So this industry and Innerwear, when I say, it's primarily it's still the the person sitting on the machine, because it's still a very labor intensive industry. There are elements of that where you are able to bring that, but it is not technology for the sake of technology. But it's technology where it is giving you efficiency, where it's giving you automation or technology, where it's giving you efficiency, where it's giving you an improvement or an edge over somebody else. Because at the end of the day, the one who wins is the one who's able to do things more efficiently, faster, better, at a better cost, because that either gives you bottom line or gives you money to invest back in the business and build a stronger business.
Faster, cheaper, better.
Faster, cheaper, better. So wo hai hamara. Many simple things, warehousing, ASRS, automatic retrieval, and that the storage and retrieval systems have come in, so that gives you greater efficiency. Warehousing, warehouse management systems, those type of things where you are able to bin, rack, send, so you're able to retrieve faster. We've invested behind some of those things. So those are technological, small things, but those are things, strapping machines, basic things, where this category gets, you have cartons. So you have people strapping them versus automated strapping.
No, it's very interesting how technology seems to be playing a part in almost every aspect of the business.
It does. Then logistics. There's a huge element there also, because in our industry, most industries, right? Now, your sale is recognized when you get a POD, proof of delivery, right? Now, I have 1,400 distributors. Okay, and if you're getting like, let's say 5-6 bills to each one of them. Okay, now you can imagine the number of bills. Okay, now there's a whole set of people managing at the end of the quarter and at the end of the year, when you have to report your numbers and you have meetings. So you have to, because sale can only be recognized if you have the PODs. Now managing all that, half the time of sales people goes back ki distributor ne POD nahi bheja, ye nahi hua. Imagine the what should say, unremunerative effort that sort of goes behind all that. Now there are technology solutions today which are able to do that seamlessly for you. So one, you're able to see it so efficiently. It's at one place. You can do various cuts with it. You can play around in Excel. You can get dashboards, and then you are able to take decisions out of that. So we are doing that.
These are the more operational pieces, and in fact, it's very interesting. In fact, some of this really opened my eyes to this. What about things that can actually help you reduce your inventory or improve your, let's say, inventory turns, etc.? Are you looking at things like
Yes,
that as
that
well?
also, it starts with your SNOP planning.
Yeah.
So again, investment behind that. See, you have to also see, ultimately it's all about data. If you have visibility of data, and if you have visibility of things from start to,
And
mind to market, then you are able to sort of,
basically a single view of
a
inventory
single
across the
view of inventory. Then you are
across
able to
the
do that.
all this.
Now, for that, not only you, but also the channels that you operate in need to be there. So there are elements of our business where we have channels where we have that visibility. So all our department stores, all are because market, mostly the D2C is on our marketplace. So there you have visibility. There you're able to manage inventory far more efficiently today. Okay, but the moment you get into the mom and pop distribution, it sort of, after the first primary fill, it becomes it used to become a black hole. And then imagine, then there's a secondary to retailers, and then the tertiary, and you don't know either of them.
Correct.
But what we have done in the last few years, and many brands in FMCG did that it's basically learning from FMCG. So one is you put DMS, because then you control.
Absolutely.
Then you do billing from that, then you do your inventory from that, you give your schemes from that, you get everything from that. Again, huge culture and mind shift. We did that in Enamor 5 years ago. So that part of the business, because again, that's premium, that's a little different. Dixie, we are doing that as we speak.
But that's 14,000 outlets, right? I mean,
no, 1,400 distributors.
1,400 distributors.
Yes.
Wow.
So you have to do that, right? So
that's a huge mindset change.
Because he has his legacy system. वो अपना किसी system में billing करता है. Why should for you? And he has multiple brands. वो तुम्हारे लिए अलग से क्यों करे to start with? Now you have to be, so there also you have to look at things as to why this is,
उसको क्या मिलेगा?
So again, it's a culture change. It's a culture. Maybe sometimes you have to incentivize, because at the end of the day, you get the data. And to your point, and especially when you do seasonal items like casual wear or thermal, if you have availability of data, and and then once you have that data, once you have that secondary sale, then you put them on ARS, automatic replenishment, and then then that whole thing of salesman को जा करके बेचना है on this part is not there. He has to go in the market, he has to do the development there, and this has to happen as a consequence of that. Wow. So वो भी हो रहा है. Then SFAs, handhelds. So salespeople, we've done that for our QC people. Like I told you, we had whatever 900. Today we have consolidated that to larger, better vendors. So the QCs also, just like sales at the back end, they had their own beats and they would go. You wouldn't know. They would go. They would fill up things, whatever उसको आता था. अब कोई आदमी उसको manage करता था, because they're going to units every day and they're checking things, stuff like that. Today we are putting that on a sort of a handheld with a certain solution, where the guy is there, his code is there, his order is there. You can go, and there are certain drop downs which you have built over a period of time. अब fabric वाले के पास जा रहे हो तो certain things you will check. And then those are things that you drop down and you mention. So it's available tomorrow because it can be captured together. You bring it at one point, you have dashboards, who can be your L1, L2 vendor, whose performance is which way, and hence whom you can move up, whom you can sort of let go. So, various things like that.
Amazing. Wow. That was a lot longer. Thanks. You worked in probably the largest innerwear brand in the world.
Yeah. Not probably the
largest. Yes, the largest innerwear brand. So where do you think, if you were to compare these international brands, how they work versus how Indian brands work, where are we on the maturity cycle? Obviously, we are not there. They have been evolved on certain aspects, etc. And where do you think it's going to go? What are the key differences that you see between those companies and how we work, and where do you think we are going?
See, specific to innerwear, this industry actually, internationally was far more evolved. Both from product, from people's expectations from that industry, and also then the whole distribution, the way the product was perceived, and then the whole distribution part of it also. In our case, as we talked about it, this is an industry which is still sort of reaching there, not there as yet. So we are a little behind that, and that makes challenges. So the things that I saw differently with Sara Lee was the whole, or HPI, even Jockey, was the whole planning cycle, the way they used to do things. It was approached very methodically, very differently. I was blown because I went to Sara Lee had a 300-member design team for all the brands sitting out of New York, because New York is where you get better designers and not Winston-Salem, right? Okay. And when you went there, so the way even innerwear was looked at. So the type of fabrics that they were working on, the type of finishes, the type of elastics, the comfort features, all those things that they were doing that. So, you're planning way ahead, and you're planning, there is a whole construct behind everything. There's a consumer first lens. Okay, there's a consumer first lens where you see and that is not necessarily only with your own industry. It's a cross pollination across various things.
Absolutely.
Right? And then you get some of those things here, and you see how you can improve this here, right? We started having dry fit, let's say for example in outerwear, right?
Yeah.
Now today you have underwear. I mean here also, but internationally long ago, because people realize, and it wasn't so when I said this category is mirroring outerwear, it started happening far earlier there. It's beginning to happen it's happening already for the premium end of the business here. The economy end of it, you said India and Bharat, the economy end of business will take a little bit of time, but that's the largest part of the business. So on a scale, if you were to pin me on that, we are still probably halfway there. But what I'm also seeing is it's also changing very rapidly. And there's this whole thing of I think economic thing that your per capita goes up beyond $2,500 in the consumption sort of that happened in China.
Yes.
I think we are sort of reaching there. I think 2,300 or
2,300 or something.
the whereabouts we are there. Okay,
yeah.
So we will, and given that we have so many people, at the end of the day, that whole large mass goes up. And I keep saying that I tell my team also, you have roti, kapda, makan. So we are amongst those three things. Kapda mein hum hai to matlab, so we will always be there. Right?
This is not an industry.
So this is an industry where I think humongous potential.
So thank you, Shekhar. Thank you so much for coming. In case we missed asking you something, you want to share with the viewers?
आपने out of syllabus भी बहुत कुछ पूछ लिया. But it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you so much.
connecting back with you and spending time with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to thank all our viewers for tuning in and giving us all the love and support that you have. Please keep writing in. Please leave your comments. We read all your comments and we try and revert back on those. We will try and improve and bring in points that you raise into our next set of podcasts. Thank you very much.